Thank you for coming back to another video for part two of the series. Last video, we went over backup and restore strategies. In this video, we're going to go over identity and account management mechanisms. So let's get straight into it. So the exercise we're going to start with today is surrounding account type, right? So the Windows OS usually has a few default users, right? Which is usually just the administrator in the guest account, right? So when you create a user on the system, I mean, if you have some sort of IT experience with just getting a new computer, right? You've done some version of this, right? So you can either create it as a standard user with limited permissions or create an administrator account with complete control over everything on the system, right? So first, what we're going to do is actually create a user account. So let's actually get started here. Let me see properly one. So, right, so actually, right, all right, perfect. So let's here. Then perfect. So now we can see on the right hand that it displays several users and groups, right? So we could create users and groups here or create a separate organizational unit, right? So actually what we're going to do is I'm going to click here and do operations here or organization. I guess I can read anymore. All right, so let's do that. All right, perfect. So now I also want to note that the benefit, right, of creating an organizational unit is that you can actually segregate the users and the group from a different department, right? So then the different sets of policies can be enforced on different organizational units. So for example, if we need to encrypt the hard drive only for the finance team, a drive encryption policy can be applied only to the financial organizational unit, right? So it'll make sense hopefully as we go further into the video, more topics on it. So now that we're back here, right, you can notice that the practice lab organizational unit is now created and selected. Or it should be selected, right? Oh, there it is. Where I was looking at. But of course, at present, there's no user, so we're going to create a new one. So, all right. So we're going to use the name that we used before. Actually, you know what? I'm going to use one of my favorite people ever, Michael. So I'll do Mike at practice lab. Password. We definitely don't want him to change his password when he logs, right? Hit finish. All right, perfect. So now we see, oh, he actually, uh, there it is. All right, perfect. So now we see that the Michael Scott account is now created. So I'm just going to keep this open. When we move it to our next task, it's going to be configuring user account properties. So usually whether you're local or domain, you can always configure a user account, right, by just modifying its properties like any other file, right? Even though the local user has limited options, typically the domain user account provides several configurable options, of course. So for example, you can configure the user's address, telephone number, and organization name. Excuse me. And other than these options, you can actually configure the remote desktop options as well and the user group. So we can also disable a user account. But what we're going to do now is just configure some user account properties. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at properties for Mr. Scott. Let's take a look at their account. All right, so first, let's actually unlock the account. Perfect. And then submit it. Pretty much you can log on at any time, right? So we can actually set the duration in which Mike is allowed to use his account. So we're forcing actually the time of day policy on this account or user, whichever hours are assigned when they won't be able to log out outside of these hours like that. So if we click the first box. So if it's submitted, please hit the second box longer on then pretty much that. Right, so when we click here, we just time block that is. Click on this, right? And then I'll just on out here. So now we can actually double log on to so all the computers, of course, are selected by default. You can actually change this by selecting just the following computers. Of course, for this one, it's going to get to computer we already use. Adding a new computer. Right. So we added Win10. So now it's added here. So that means we can click OK. So now that we're on here, let's apply. Okay, if we want to work today, I'll call off. No, perfect. So we're good there. All right. Perfect. So now we can actually reset. So I do not. The password has been changed, right? And it stated that for us in dialog box. All right. So now we just actually want to disable the account. Account has been disabled with the message that is displayed for us, but we can also re-enable the account, which is done here. And we can only do all of these actions because we are the administrator for this particular server to do this for another user that's created, right? So, so now we can actually delete Michael Scott because we've showed all of the different, at least the surface level as they can get the different configurations that we can have for another user when you have admin rights. So what we're going to do is just keep this open so we can actually check account permissions. So each user in the system has some default permissions, right? That can be modified by adding the user to different groups. So, for example, when you create a user in the domain, it's part of the domain users, right, by default. So all the permissions applicable to the domain users are applied to the user. So, but you can always add a user to another group for a thing, grant or remove particular permission. So what we're going to do is actually ensure. Let's recreate. Um, create the account the lazy way, I guess. All right, I'll just create a new. Just do it the same way I did before. What should I do? Scarn. If you know, you know. Right. Password. Right. Perfect. So now I've recreated them. So I'm just gonna take a look at the properties again. Remember, right. So as I've just stated, now he's literally just set him up, didn't give him special access to anything in particular that's out of the realm of possibility, but he's automatically added to the domain user's account or domain rather. So now what we're going to do is actually put him in a group. Then check name. So group policy creator owners, right? So now that we've added them, make sure I do this here. Perfect. So now I'm on the properties dialog box. Besides being part of the domain user group, you can also see he's now part of the group policies, right? So we can actually apply and then okay. All right. And then this allows us to move on to our next exercise, which is account policies. So whenever users are part of a domain, right, several account policies can apply. You can kind of relate this to just municipalities, right? As far as counties, states, cities, towns, or what may have you, right? You can apply them to users groups and systems that are part of a domain, right? So if a user is not part of a domain, you can actually use the local security policy to apply account policies. So there's actually a few different ways, right, as far as to do this. One of them is network location, right? So you can take a look into geofencing, geotagging, location time-based login, and possible time travel or risky logins, right? Configuring a password policy, right? Which is what we're actually going to get into specifically, right? And of course, in a Windows environment, you can create or define the type of password that a user can create, right? So what we're going to do is take a look at the GPM for here, right? And then let's open this up, and then let's see that up. Then take a look at our policies. So you were just mentioning that we're going to get the security and account policies. Right now, to configure the password policy on the local system, we would normally open the local security policy console, right? And we just navigate two different ways, right? So we can actually, right. So now that the password related policies, they're enabled by default. Let's um, so this just now with this policy enabled, you just won't be able to use the last 24 passwords to the price that you had used on a particular account. So what we're going to do is, it's actually quite a lot. So what we're going to do is change it to 5. Right. So now that the domain users just won't be able to use the last 5 passwords. So when the user changes their password for the 6th time, then the first of the 5 passwords can be reused. So we can actually click on the here, and let's go. All right. Not sure why, but the window just keeps going away. But we changed it to 8. The default value is 7, right? So now that the minimum password length is 8, that's pretty much the policy. You can't have any character. You can't have your amount of characters for your password be less than 8. Set of parameters of the accepted characters that we do have that you can use to constitute a password. So I'm just going to keep the default policies for the remaining policies, right? So let's actually take a look here, right? All right, nonetheless, that's fine. Let's take a look at the properties here, right? All right, what's going on here? You know what? It's a little bit better. There it is. Not sure what's going on. All right, so weird. All right, so we're gonna change this to. I think we should do it for 5. What do you guys think? No. Okay, I'll leave it for 30. That's fine. All right, let's go practice. Anyway, but the suggested value changes, of course, is changed in the box and then back to the quarterly following it. What's going on here? All right, so now it will reset the few values, the account lockout threshold that we did, and reset account lockout after, right? So it closed automatically, it looks like, because I did not close it out, even though I've been having issues. There it is. All right, perfect. So now we're just going to manage guest and admin accounts via the group policy. So at the domain level, we can manage guest an admin account via the group policy, right? We actually done this before in another video. So if we need to perform the same task at a system level, we can actually open a few things that'll get us from the security policy console to navigate to a node that allows us to take a look at these configurations, right? So that's actually what we're going to do. So let's take a look here. Let's see. Go to local security options. We can see a lot of lists of policy settings that are, or options that are not fine. But what we're going to do now is just disable the guest account on all domain systems. And we're also going to rename the account too. So let's actually, um, perfect. Okay. Okay, perfect. It's not find this. We're going to name it to okay. Fine. Back to as we can see here, policy settings, right? So now back on the window, we see that again, both policies are now configured. Now we're just going to configure access policies as well. So other than administrative path, the normal user has access to several tools and utilities, right? In Windows at least. So we can actually restrict this access to several tools and utilities. For example, we can restrict access to the command prompt. So I'm actually going to, let's see, where did it go? Perfect. There we go. Uh, okay. Um, let's see here. There it is. Okay. See what I was here. Perfect. All right. So now I'm just gonna prohibit access. All right. So let's select enabled. Okay. So now the policy is now enabled. All right. So now we're gonna take a look at the system. That is. I'm just gonna prevent access to the command prompt. All right. Disabled. Okay. You can see here disabled. Perfect. So now that the policy is now enabled, we're going to prevent access to registry editing tools as well. So disable. Come on. Go. All right, perfect. And actually, I confused myself. Still enable because of what the nature of what it is. If you enable this policy setting and the user tries to open up the command window, this is a message explaining that setting the action. That's where, because the action itself is preventing access, I need to enable it, disable it. So that's why I confused myself, probably because it's a bit late. But nonetheless, let's actually take a look at the removable storage, right? So now we can actually take a look at the remove this, right? Then enabled by. So now when this policy is enabled and it comes to effect, it'll prevent write access to the USB drives or any kind of removable media. So now we're going to perform an account audit. So usually a user account can be audited locally or on a system or audited using just a group policy. So when you configure a group policy, typically you can edit users in a specific organizational unit or even in the entire domain. So we're just going to configure account auditing at the domain level. So I'm actually going to stay on this server still. So let's take a look at different folders here. So actually, yeah, okay. Hmm. Yeah, does it give me what I'm looking for? See, back up again. Take a look here. So I'm looking for local policies. And not, let's fix this. All right, perfect. Now we're back on track. It was again, as usual, user error. All right. So let's actually take a look here. All right. So sorry. Let's of course define these, and we're going to untick this and tick that. Now, it's critical to audit the failed logon events, right? Because if one account has continuously failed logon events, then it could be someone that's trying to guess passwords for an account, a user account. Particularly, this actually happened to me within the last 24 hours. Someone was trying to access my FanDuel account, and I received an email that my account was actually locked because of so many failed login attempts. So this is it definitely rings true for any account, whether it's an enterprise computer or network for an account or a personal one, right? This can happen in any given moment, any time. So on any account. So now we're just going to so now the policy is configured, right? So we're also going to configure the audit logon event, right? So let's take a look here. Let's define this, and then let's do the same here. All right, perfect. So the policy is now configured. It's always good to enable auditing right on the object that the user is accessing in the domain. So now let's take a look at audit privilege use, right? Let's open it and then same concept. I figure it's automatic. All right, actually, you know what? I'll do both. All right, perfect. So we're all set there. And with that being said, that brings us to the end of this particular video for identity and account management mechanisms. And just a more brief recap of what we went over. We went over identity, account types, and account policies, and a few things like identity providers, performing account audits, account permissions, and things of that jazz, and a few other things, right? Next video is going to be identifying different application exploits. It'd be fun. You stay curious, stay secure, and I'll see you in the next video.